So today I am going to be talking to you about creating and managing Active Directory groups and organizational units. Now, before I talk about this point, I want to go in a little bit to what Active Directory is. Active Directory is basically a special purpose database. It's not a registry replacement. A lot of people ask, why do you need Active Directory if you have a registry in Windows? The registry is a database that stored information about the computer only. The AD stores information about the network and its design. It's primarily controlled by the domain. The directory is designed to manage read and search operations of what are called objects. These are users, printers, items within the system that have to be managed with permissions attached to them. Whereas the registry is more for keeping track of drivers and configuration settings for applications. The reason Active Directory is important is because it allows Windows to handle the large number of read and search operations that are necessary to keep track of every device that's on the network. So, before we talk about organizational units and groups, let's talk about containers. Containers are the building block of an Active Directory service. They are an object that can hold other objects. Some of these you can create. Organizational units are a special type of container, but Windows also creates them by default, and they're important because even though your basic containers don't have a lot of the control that you have with organizational units, because they don't necessarily have permissions assigned with them, they make a great place to put a default object when you create it in order to make sure that that object remains manageable. Okay, so there's several ways that we can go and create an organizational unit. The first, if we go under Tools, we can get to the traditional Active Directory users and computers, and we will see our Active Directory. If you click on Users, you'll see all of the users in the system. At this point, we can right-click, say New, and we can create an organizational unit. This is the way that organizational units and groups were traditionally created in Windows Server. One of the downsides to doing groups this way is that you would need to then go in and set up additional properties for this group. In a second, we're going to look at a new way specific to Server 2008 and 2012 R2 that's going to let you put in this information at the time you create the group instead of having to go back in and add it later. So one of the new features to Server 2012 and 2008 is the Server Manager. And the Server Manager is giving us a launcher for all of these various aspects that we're managing. The Active Directory Administrative Center is available through this dashboard, and it's going to give you an interface that has the same look and appearance of the Server Manager, and it's going to allow you to do a lot more when you create your groups. The setup initially is very similar. We can go in, right-click, say New, and create an organizational unit. But now, when it comes up, it gives us a slightly different appearance. It allows us to set up the name, address, description. It allows us to specify a country or region, but we can also allow the group to be managed from the get-go. This is especially useful if you want to set up permissions on an OU by OU basis and delegate some of your administrative functions to others without giving them too much control over your domain. The last method is with Powershell. Powershell is kind of cool because it's sort of a new aspect of server. It's not that you couldn't do command line stuff in Windows, but you know, for years Windows was like the downside to Linux is command line, the downside to all these other systems is all the command line. You know, they really sold the graphical interface. And what you're seeing in newer server products is they're now making it where you can do more and more through the command line, which makes it scriptable, and you can do it easier. Their PowerShell is providing all sorts of commands so that you don't have to rely on .NET or scripting to do what you need to do. And now if we go back into the Server Manager, we will be able to see all of the groups that we created by going under Tools and again looking at our Active Directory users and computers. So now that we have these organizational units, there's a lot of things we can do with this. We can create another group inside of that group, which is going to allow us to store backups. We could store backups of users, settings, groups, devices. We could set up another container just to put printers and run all of our print devices. We can go into these properties, we can add a description for the group, associate it with an email, assign members to that group, or allow it to be managed by a single individual. This is going to give us a lot of control over who can do what things on our network, and it's going to allow us to delegate certain controls to individuals without giving them too much control over the network, and that's really what makes Active Directory work. Containers by themselves are very generic, but we have objects that we can create that are actually types of specialized containers. Our users are groups in our computers. They can be stored within an organizational unit, and then you can apply a single property to all of those users, all of those groups, everyone in those groups, or any object that's been placed into that group. We also have built-in accounts. There's a guest account that's created. You have to have it. You can hide it, but you can't get rid of it. Foreign security principles are a form of container. They contain all of the trusts that you have with other networks that allow you to communicate and pass data between them. We also have generic and created containers, your site, your domain. You could have multiple domains on a network. We could have our Tokyo office and our New York office. You could also have multiple sites. Sites within a domain are more based around physicality. It's all of the machines within an area typically that have the same IP.